Hey, what's going on, guys? And welcome to another podcast. Today, I've got you guys a special guest called Jay Souza. He's one of the OGs of Prints on Demand. He started in 2013, and he's made over 1.3 million in sales. Guys, I'm telling you, the guy is a real deal. He knows what he's talking about. We're going to talk about Etsy, Merch by Amazon, his journey. We're going to do some. He's going to give you some tips and tricks how you can be successful in print on demand, and we're going to hear it all from the horse's mouth. Jay, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. It's been it's humbling, right, to be able to be on a show. I've heard lots about you too, so it's a privilege. This kind of thing isn't lost on me. It's still humbling.
Cool, man. Nice to meet you. Honestly, man, it's been a while since I've been wanting to get you on the show, but as you know, life takes over. Things get in the way, but finally, we got you in. So, yeah, give us a bit of like an introduction, a background about Jay. Who's Jay D'Souza? How did you start? What made you start Print on Demand? When did you start, etc., etc.? Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so I'm from 2021 in college. I'm a trained graphic designer, and that's kind of how I grew up as an artist with a sketchbook, writing graffiti, got into airbrushing. So graphic design after 2 years after high school, I didn't really know that graphic design was even a thing, right? Until I started speaking to some older friends that were, you should check this out. You should check this out. So like, okay, so I go into graphic design. Turns out there's a massive gap in the marketplace for qualified graphic designers. And then by the time I'm in my second year of a 3-year college program, the market is saturated. There's 400,000 overqualified graphic designers and only 50,000 available jobs in the greater Toronto area. So then what? I offered a job. I had to take it. So I dropped out, took a practical job working in graphic design, and I learned more there than I probably ever would have in the year and a half left of college. But so I started graphic design. By the time I was 6 or 7 years in my field, I ended up managing 144 direct reports, almost 150 designers at Canada's number one publishing country at the time, and being one of the youngest managers on the totem pole, so to speak, on the echelon. My layoffs came, and my head was on the chopping block. I was going to be one of the first ones let go because my seniority was so low. I ended up in a data center at TD Bank, and that was 12 hours, 3 days, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and then it would flip to nights, and it was like the most excruciatingly toxic place environment I think I could ever wish on anybody, aside from like first responders and there's some things they see. But in terms of like the financial industry is soul crushing in so many ways, and it kind of turned me into a person that nobody want to be around. I'm typically a happy-go-lucky kind of positive guy. It's I like having fun in my life with surrounding myself with people that make me laugh, and I was turning into a person that I feel that nobody would in their right mind want to be around, right? So I knew I had to make a change. I was getting depressed and everything, and it wasn't fair to my wife, the people I care about. It wasn't fair to people around me. So I started exploring, doing more things of like the freelance graphics on the side to get into it. And then a guy who's now been a friend of mine, he was like an OG on Etsy. He's been there since 2010 or so. I put up ads everywhere on all the local classifieds for freelance graphic design services. And he called me up and said, "Hey, I sell on Etsy. Can you make t-shirt designs?" I said, "Well, what's Etsy?" And yeah, sure, I'll make t-shirt designs. I've done that before. How do you want it? So he taught me how to design in all vector for his vinyl plotter. So he was pressing everything, right? So it was technically print on demand by rights. He was only creating the shirt as ordered, right?
Right.
He introduced me to this whole new world of like where I had already sold a few shirts, but like to businesses where you would order, 20 or 30 or 50 at a time from a screen printer and ship them out or drop them off in my car, that sort of thing. So then, after that for a while, he was paying me $10 or $15 then it didn't take me long to figure out, well, hey, why don't I just see if he'll bite on the royalty phase? So I said, how about you just give me $3 fine and $5 for sale, $3 for a t-shirt sale, $5 for a hoodie sale, and
Mhm.
see how it goes. And he thought that was great. Now, it made me invested sort of more so into the artwork, because now I want to
Right.
create like designs, like bangers, right? I want
That
something
will
to sell
sell.
100 times over, not just once and done. So, and it made him a lot more money than what he would have if I was only getting paid the $15. So it didn't take long, and I was like, well, I'm for myself. Right. So I opened up my own Etsy shop, and he was fulfilling me. So now is the same kind of idea. I was only getting $3 profit. He was doing all the work. So that's fine.
Mhm.
I'll just take my $3 royal, but it's my own shop, right? And I would pay him, kind of thing. Uh, yeah, so that was the early days, and then another mutual friend reached out a few years later and just told me about these two young guys that were kind of printing on this desktop printer, but it was like a laser printer, but for t-shirts. I'm like, what
Mm.
the heck? Like, what do you mean? Because like with a vinyl plotter, you have to be very basic, that
Yeah.
it can be cut out, and you have to
Yeah.
weed the negative space in between the letters, like the center of the O. You have to pluck that out, right? It's a very manual and
Mm.
tedious process, and it's very crudely limiting, right? So
Right.
when you start talking about a laser printer on a desktop, I'm like, wait, you mean full color? If coming from a guy who was airbrushing t-shirts and that sort of thing, this was a
Mm.
dream, right? Like, oh my god, are you serious? So then, mind blown. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna try these guys out. So it was now, the traditional print on demand type thing, right? Where I'm paying them. They have a Dropbox link to my all my artwork, and I would upload and blah blah blah.
Mhm.
And the rest is kind of history that way. I think I've just kind of grown with the industry. I've seen it kind of evolve. So yeah, hopefully I've got some insights there for a few of your
That's
listeners as to,
amazing.
you know,
Amazing, man.
it's a
So,
pretty, it's
yeah, sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say been a pretty incredible journey, and it's allowed me to kind of live life on my terms, right? Ultimately, so that's it.
Amazing. So, from someone who was really had enough of your job, you completely switched it around and moved and started working for yourself, and you basically made your life something that you really want, not something that other people wanted for you, right? And
Absolutely,
you moved from,
quit.
yeah, go on.
I had to quit the bank job about, a year later. I maybe 14 months later, I quit the bank job. I gave up the pension, the benefits, the whole thing, because like it's that whole mindset thing where like I needed to be healthy and good in my own self, with my own being, with my own outlook on life, and do things my way, because if we're going to end up being a corporate slave in a structure that only benefits the people that we serve, then that's not a way to live life, right?
Absolutely, man. When you have that light bulb moments when you think, I need out, right? Trust me, it gets better from there. Yes, you might be desperate in the beginning, things are not working out, you have not established yourself. Maybe the first hustle didn't work out, and you feel like, oh my God, are people lying? Is this a scam? Making money online, that kind of thing. But then when you figure it out, you're like, oh my God, what have I been doing all my life? What have I been doing? Sacrificing 8 hours a day, basic. A lot of people do overtime for nothing,
Yeah,
right? I've been sacrificing all this time for pennies,
yeah,
pennies on the dollar. Why have I been doing this? And the earlier you figure it out, the better. So
and
a lot of
that's just
entrepreneurs go through the same thing.
yeah, that's just it, right? Like you want to make, and they tease you. They dangle that carrot, which is just the paycheck, right?
Yeah.
They dangle that in front of you, that you work more, you dedicate more of life to making, the management and their upper levels richer, and you might get a 2% increase year over year, and all that does afford luxuries that you think you need to impress people who give a crap about
Yeah.
you, right? Like,
Yeah.
as soon as you can get out of that
Absolutely.
headspace, like you look at the richest people, the billionaires out there, they're all wearing blank t-shirts and ripped jeans. Nobody's wearing the flashy, right? Like,
Yeah. Absolutely. So the whole corporate job thing is just an illusion. It's there to just keep you from getting rich, because you're never going to get
Yeah,
rich. The only people that are going to get rich are the people at the top, the owners, right? We could argue there the CEOs and upper echelon management and all of that. It's not, I wouldn't say those are rich, right? If you're making
right.
200K a year, you're not rich. Especially by today's standards with the inflation that's going up like crazy, and the cost of living and all of that. You're not
Or
rich.
or God forbid you live in the United States, which I'm fortunate to be in Canada. I recognize my privilege in that respect. But if you're in the United States and you have an injury or illness, you could
Oh,
easily go 200-300K in debt. And if
easily.
you're 40 or 50,000 a year in a 9 to 5 job, you're never going to get out of debt,
Never
right?
gonna get out of
It's
it.
a criminal
Imagine.
system, and it's the hamster wheel and the whole,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
those
uh,
cliches are true.
yeah. Anyway, so and they give you, like we were talking about, the dangling that carrot. Yeah, and they tease you with a bit of promotion. Oh, when it's not enough, that 2% increase a year, which gets easily cancelled out by the rate of inflation,
Well,
right?
that's what I was saying. I'm telling people the last 3 years we've seen in North America, we've seen 5 to 7% inflation year over year, right?
Yeah,
And it's like if you're getting anything less than 4 or 5% pay raise, you're effectively taking a pay cut. I don't care if your pay is
yeah,
going up, but if you're going up 3% a year and inflation's going up 6, you're losing 3% purchase power on every single dollar,
yeah.
and you still feel like your net worth is going up. You feel that way, but it's an absolute
But you're
misperception
not.
that they've tricked you.
Yeah,
It's mind
and
blowing.
and it feels like you have to take on a second job just so you can survive, right? But anyway, that's another subject. Let's stick to print on demand. So tell me about why print on demand and why not freelancing, because you could have got into freelancing, taken on big corporate jobs, working for yourself. Why did you choose the route of POD?
Well, I think anybody will probably echo my sentiments when I say that once you've worked for customers or had to deal with people for long enough, you just don't want to anymore. I've had countless amounts of customers when I do logo design and branding and stuff like, oh, how about I just sit with you? Well, you quickly say no, because then the fee goes, you know what I mean?
Mm,
Or can we just get on a call to talk about this? Can we talk? No, because well, then I've introduced consultation fees. Oh, well, I don't
mm,
want to pay that extra $300 if you're only charging me 200 for a logo. I'm like, well, you want to take up 4 hours of my time to talk about your logo
mm,
instead of just writing my email with the past. And yeah, ultimately POD, you don't have to deal with the customer other than them asking questions potentially on Etsy, for example, about the product that they're intending to purchase anyway. So as long
it's
as
not
you can
complicated,
deliver,
it's quick. Yeah.
yeah, you can
Whereas
give, answer their questions in the most clearest, concise manner, avoid back and forth at all costs, and you can just, information overload is real. Analysis paralysis is real. These are things when a customer is flooded with too much information, it makes them
I
hesitant
agree.
to actually add to cart and check out. So less is more. Be concise in your responses, and you're going to be happy. You're happy. You didn't waste any time. It might have taken you 30-40 seconds to answer that convo on Etsy, but you just made a $10 profit on whatever shirt you're making, right? So it's worth
Perfect,
it.
man.
That's your
Perfect.
time is more valuable than if I was doing freelance, because it's not just about the things you're doing, it's about the time you invest in the people and the conversations that you don't get paid for that nobody notices, right?
I couldn't agree more. And so now you're doing Etsy, you're also doing merch by Amazon. So at one point you were really big on Etsy compared to merch by Amazon, but now merch by Amazon has started to take off for you. So talk to us about what are you currently doing with Etsy and what are you currently doing with merch by Amazon? And are you also in other platforms like Shopify integrated with Printify or Printful or whatever? So tell us about what you're doing
So
currently, and what is the
so
difference between all of them, and why would you prefer one or the other?
right, yeah, good question. So Etsy, Etsy is kind of like it's been my bread and butter for a long time. It's been like the, my sustenance, my staple. It is continuing to grow. It's grown slowly than I would love to be able to say otherwise, but it's growing slower. Also, we travel a lot, we do a lot of things, and we're, you know, not that I'm making excuses, but I learned in my time as an entrepreneur that you have to enjoy the fruits of your labors as well, because anyone can make, 200-300K a year in profit if you put your nose down and you're working 12 hours a day, or you figure out a way to continually upload and find new niches and doors and all that stuff. But if you want to enjoy the bits of life, you quickly figure out how little you need in terms of material things
Mm.
and how more you need in terms of experiences in order to feel satiated, right? It's a completely different thing for me. So I
Agreed.
do Etsy and merch part-time, and I would argue that both of them provide full-time incomes now. But as you know, somebody in the space would, in the POD space would, it takes work to get where we are, right? There's
Hmm.
no get rich quick scheme or dream. It takes real work. But if you want to put the work in, it can come. So like I've leaned a bit more on the merch in recent years, but it's in the last 2 years or so. So I don't do more than 4 hours a week on merch, and I only do 7 to 10 hours on Etsy. That's my
Mm.
week, right? The rest been designing, and I'm trying to design now for both. So if you can kind of create a t-shirt design, for example, is been my forte. Go back 5 years ago, Amazon shopper. So now talking about the differences, the Amazon shopper wasn't as artistically educated, I would say,
Hmm.
from a graphic designer's perspective, as a Etsy shopper would be. So what was selling on Etsy is more like a boutique versus the Amazon, which I would call like the more of the masses, right?
Hmm.
They're not as educated. They don't care aesthetically. They're more about the message than the way it
Hmm.
looks. Where Etsy, you had to nail the aesthetic as well. People buy into an emotional purchase. They want to know that they're part of a brand. The story matters more. Where Amazon, it's more like, I just want that shirt Wednesday. It was cool. I thought it was great. I want it in my mailbox on Friday. And that's kind of where that goes, right? But now I've seen a massive evolution to where my best selling Etsy designs are starting to actually work on Amazon. So Amazon, I feel, is like maybe 2 or 3 years in arrears and behind from, kind of like how North America is 2 or 3 years in behind UK in
Mm.
terms of fashion, right? So Amazon is like that when see. So I'm able now to finally design of what I kind of, figuring that sweet spot. My designs will make sales on both platforms, because the misconception is just because you've had success on Merch by Amazon and you throw those up on Etsy, I mean, you're essentially putting up
It doesn't work
listings that
like
are
that.
3 years old in terms of an
Yeah.
aesthetic, never going to sell, right?
But also
Uh,
the Etsy audience, I'm not, I'm sure that you'll probably agree with me on that. Is different from Merch by Amazon in terms of what they like. So the style of design that works on Etsy is different from the style of design that works on Amazon. I find that designs on Etsy, the less complicated, the simpler the design is, the better, the more it works, right?
yeah.
And on Merch by Amazon, both styles work equally, I would say. So it could be a simple design, there's an audience for it. If it's a more complicated design, then there's also an audience for it. But with Etsy, I find that most designs that do really well, they're very simple. What do you think about that?
I think they can be, but it's about bringing something to, like, nobody's reinventing the wheel here, right? Like there's
No,
no unique. The concept of like be unique, I think, is taking of context in terms of the fact that you're going to be inspired, and you know I guess you're going to have some kind of formulated ideas based on what you've seen, with advertising and everything else too. There's almost no such thing in our day and age of like some completely unique, right? There's always influences. So like even if your design is very simple or very involved, as long as it's something new or a new take on something in that
exactly.
niche, it's identifying those gaps, right? So like my wife's got a big dog shop. Dogs is, it's not a new thing to cater to pet people, right? But she's bringing a new aesthetic, a new kind of look. So
A new
to say
concept,
that
a
it has
new
to be,
design style.
yeah, and that's it, in an old niche, right? It's not,
Mm,
it's nothing new. It's just it's her take on something that isn't already out there. So to say, like, something more simple can absolutely sell. It's more about the aesthetic than it is about the getting hours spent on it. And that's a big mistake that I see a lot of
mm,
people do when it comes to Etsy and even merch, is putting in hours and hours and hours of work on this beautiful masterpiece. And as a designer and artist myself, like, I would these, Picassos and Dalis, and nobody wants it. Nobody wants it.
mm,
They want the two
mm.
word shirt, right?
Exactly.
So, like,
So knowing
you have
exactly
to,
what sells and doing that and catering to it.
yeah,
So what I've noticed from a lot of people, they get too attached, too emotionally attached to a design. They spend like a day on that design and they're like, this is the best design, it has to sell. If it doesn't sell, then it's not fair, then
yeah,
merch or Etsy favor certain sellers, um and they give them the sales, but they don't give me sales. This is not fair, I'm gonna quit, when in fact you're just spending too much time on that design that nobody wants, and you think that people want it because you like it, because you spent a day designing that design. I
yeah.
think that's a
And
big mistake.
that kind of goes back to the whole thing where I say, the average consumer isn't artistically educated enough to respect the level or work you put into something. At the end of the day, they see a t-shirt, they either like it or they don't. And if they don't, they move on. So, like,
Mm,
if you can think and compartmentalize and separate your options from, the romantic idea that, oh, this is so beautiful that everyone's
absolutely.
going to love it. Nobody gives a shit about it, right? No, nobody
Yeah.
cares,
Yeah,
right?
and I'm sure that you don't design for yourself, you design for the market. You basically separate what you like from what the market likes. You don't care about what you like because what you like means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Nobody cares what you like. People care about what the market likes. People care about when they see a design, they want it for them, not because you designed it and you liked it, right?
Yeah.
So I think when people learn to figure out what the market wants and they design for the market, I think they'll be way more successful than being emotionally invested in a design that they designed because they liked it.
Yeah, I would argue that even doing something that you like, that starting in a niche that is probably the easiest way to crack that
Mm-mm.
nut, to get into an industry, because you will be the subject matter expert in most environments or rooms, right? So if you know something, it becomes easier to do the research. It becomes easier to know the unique colloquialisms, the slang, the lingo, the
Mm.
trending color schemes. You also typically surrounding yourself with like-minded people in your friendship circles, right? So you know that you're not the only one who likes the idea of stuff that niche. So when you create design, if you can think of it as a design that you would personally wear, that is different, and that has become on that level where now maybe you've got an object or a design that you can sell,
Mm.
versus something you just think is cute. Well, if you wouldn't even wear it yourself, nobody else is going to wear it, right? So it's like kind of figuring out that defining line and then listening to your customer. So many times, like, my wife she's hit the nail on the head with the dog friendly niche, because it's an incredibly passionate audience, right? So when she's getting customer questions about, can you do the dog breed? She doesn't say no. She says absolutely. And it's just a matter of how fast you can get it up for them to purchase. But
Mm.
they're thirsting, they're salivating for stuff, right? So listen to your customers is, you know, success leaves clues, is something I think Tony Robbins said once, that I've never kind of followed him, but I
Mm.
remember that, right? Like, look at your reviews. What do people mention all the time? The fit, the color, the aesthetic. And when they ask you for things, listen, pay attention to what they're asking for, because they're telling you what you want, what they want, right? You'd
Mm.
be an idiot not to kind of, cater that way.
Exactly. This is probably going to sound controversial and a bit weird, but 99% of designs that I make, I would never wear. It's not because it's not a good design, it's because it's not my style. Like my style is plain t-shirts, right? It could be a logo of, I don't know, of any brand, right? Or even a plain white t-shirt. That's what I like, right? I would never
Yeah.
go, full bells and whistles, vintage style mixed with this, with that. It's just not my style. But I've learned to watch what people want in the market and just make things for them. Now, if I
Yeah.
don't wear it, it doesn't mean that, it's not a good design. It's just not what I like. It's just not my preference to wear those kind of t-shirts. You know what I mean? So,
I complete 1000% agree. So the avenue that my wife takes, for example, would be perfect for, a Shopify brand or, she's building a brand is this inherently what she's doing. And she has a ton of repeat customers and she's doing it right that way. I am less spiritual that way. I am less kind of, attached to that idea. For me now at this point in my life, I've learned how to create designs for what people want. I don't wear half the stuff I design. I know what sells. And for me, that just means that we're always going to have a roof over our head. We're always going to
yeah,
have food in the fridge. We're always going to have a vehicle or a means to get from A to B. And that to me is number one, is making sure that my family is whole. And for that to happen, I need dollars to come, right?
yeah.
Whatever I want is now secondary,
Irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
right?
Yeah.
Or
So,
borderline irrelevant. Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Cool. So I think we've established this as a lesson for people. Guys, do not go by what you like, go by what the market wants and design for it. That's
Sure. And if
pure
you're
simple. And
stuck and you don't know where to start with what you know,
start
for
with what
sure.
you like. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But listen to your customers and remove yourself emotionally, especially in responding to reviews or anything like that, right? Don't take
Yeah.
it personally. Criticizing the design or the you're a business owner. Like you have to separate the hobby and the emotional attachment and treat it like a business, like a owner of a store, a brick and mortar, the owner
Yeah.
of Target or H&M or whoever, they don't care about the designs in their shop. They just care about the money coming in, right? So if
The
it
money,
depends on
profit.
which narrative you will kind of want to, assimilate.
Cool. So we spoke a bit about Etsy and merch by Amazon. So you do both Etsy and merch by Amazon. So do you want to talk to us about the transition from Etsy to integrating merch by Amazon as well in your system, in your process, and maybe other things that you're currently doing?
Yeah, so I got into merch ultimately by one of a well-known person in the merch community had asked me about licensing one of my trademarks that I had from years ago, and so I was like, "What is this merch on?" Right? So I get into this kind of idea that I don't even have to deal with customers. Like this is a mind-blowing thing to me, right? What was already becoming an easy way for me to make money, merch ended up being even easier. But it comes with the caveat that you need to apply, you need to get approved, you need to show some kind of like understanding of the platform, adherence to IP education, into property stuff. But that said, like I already had a catalog of design, it made absolutely all the sense to try and put things over. But like you say, I had some very involved designs. I had some beautiful, quote unquote, at the time was selling was some really nice pieces of art. Putting that on Amazon was a tough go in the beginning, right? Because a different customer. But now, I mean, I'm only 8,000. If your listeners, a lot of them I know are merch folks, they understand that. But I just crossed 1.5 million in T-shirts sold on merch in tier 8,000. So
Amazing.
I've kind of,
That's
yeah, I
amazing.
figured
Yeah.
that out. I've figured out
Yeah.
merch, I think. Um, and it's funny because people always ask about like, what are your niches, top selling niches? I think the biggest mistake is that people focus on all these low competition niches or low competition keywords. Yes, there's value there. There's value everywhere. But I just look at it as a smaller pie to get a piece from. I don't shy away from competition. I'll give you my three top selling niches right now. This is like, I've never done this. I've never kind of put it out there, but they're cats, tacos, and birthdays.
Amazing.
I don't care because no one's going to take my piece of the pie. They're going to take
Yeah.
their own slice from a massive pie. You know
Massive pie.
what I
Yeah.
mean? So when people sometimes shy away from high competitions, sometimes low competition literally only means low demand. So
Yeah,
I don't ever want to be kind of pigeonholed in a certain kind of direction. Go after the big things. Don't be afraid. Come with a new spin on an existing idea, I think. But
I could not
merch has been a
agree more,
trip. It's
mate.
great.
I could not agree more. The money is in the trends. I've always said it. The real money, if you really want to make like 100K a year minimum,
Yeah.
you need to be doing trends. There is literally no way that you could do it with evergreens alone. It's
Well,
impossible.
I would argue that my evergreens, for example, I think there's a blur, right? Like it doesn't have to be one or the other. It's so well, cat tacos and birthdays are evergreen. They're going
Yeah,
to
but they do
sell.
trend sometimes. So, for example, tacos would trend in Cinco de Mayo, right? Cats
Oh,
could
there's
trend
a
in
peak,
you
sure.
know, there's a peak, and when one of the designs does really well, you basically can make a whole year's worth of income just from that one design. So
Yes,
this is what I'm trying to say. Like even if you don't
seasonality
work
in that respect.
seasonality
Yeah,
in that aspects, yeah. So, but there are certain niches that don't trend at all. And I
right.
try and avoid those at all costs because, especially if I see like, the first page has all designs have a BSR of below 1 million and it doesn't move anywhere, and you can make one sale a month from one design. This is a niche that I personally would shy away from. I would go into a niche where I can have a BSR that has 10K or 20K, right?
Yeah,
And that's where the real opportunity is, because I'm like, if I can get that person's place, right, and my design becomes the bestseller, then I'm making good money here. This is just the way I do it. I don't know if you would agree.
yeah. Yeah. There's absolutely. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to win, right?
Yeah,
That's also coincidentally why my channel is called Jay's Way, not the way, because it's
of
what's worked
course.
for me, right? But in the same in breath, I think people confuse trends and seasonality. Like seasonality to me is an element of evergreen there, right? Because you could potentially have that spike year over year indefinitely, as long
Yeah,
as your design doesn't kind of, you know, taste or style or any kind. But trends, when people say trends, like when they're following like the lunar eclipse or certain obscure things, and they dump all their time and effort into those things, yes, you can make 10K that month or whatever on one design, but 3 months later it's making zero. And I would rather kind of stay, if I'm going to do trending, it would be more along the seasonality kind of things where it would have bumps, and then I
yeah,
try to space those out. But ultimately, like, I try to do things that will sell consistently every day. But that said, even a big thing I see is like, well, evergreen, evergreen, evergreen. But even evergreen designs have a finite shelf life. They will
mm,
one day expire, and you have to recognize that. It's not a set it and forget it. There's color trends a year. Etsy puts
yes,
out a guide. Amazon puts out a guide. Sherman Williams, a paint company, they put out their all the pay attention to this stuff, right?
yeah,
Like these are the colors of 2023.
yes.
The color palettes, the aesthetic. People like that retro sunset for a few people.
The
Like
style, yeah.
the distressed look. Those are all things
The
that you can
wavy,
apply
the
to your
groovy, the
evergreen niche.
wavy, that kind of thing. The
You got
groovy
it.
style designs, those sell like hotcakes. So if you
You
so,
got
and
it.
that's coming back to what you were saying earlier. If you could just infuse a niche that's doing well, like just a cat's niche, and bring in
Yeah.
the new style of this year to that niche, then you'll be the bestseller because people want to buy something that is trending, not in terms
Yeah.
of the quote or in terms of the niche itself, but in terms of the design style. So now you've completely revolutionized that space just by changing a few things. This is what we meant by that earlier.
Yeah, like in terms of trends, that's what I
Yeah,
follow is the trending aesthetics, the trending lingo, the trend everything. But niches themselves, they've been around for hundreds of years.
yeah,
Literally, it's as famous as the pyramids are. Right? So
exactly. So do you use any particular strategy in terms of research?
good question. I just now I just know the niches I'm in well, inside out. So it starts there. So if there's anything that catches my eye, and I mean, I've used all the tools. I've used all the tools, and a lot of them do the same. I like for Etsy, I'm partial to eRank. Okay, to mention tools or
Oh, you can mention
yeah,
tools, man, all day, not a problem. But you haven't used Merge Dominator yet. I'm gonna give you a free account so you can test it out, man.
absolutely, yeah.
Stuff that it
I've used
does
all
is
the
absolutely
basically.
crazy.
Yeah, it's not about plugging anything here either. It's just I've used all the most popular tools or the
Yeah,
ones that
yeah, yeah.
that people throw out the most in the groups. I've had them all.
Yeah.
I just spend less time doing that kind of research. I think like I end up just typing stuff in the search bar, and I know people who swear that that's the worst way to go about it. But you know what? Again, it's what's worked for me, and Amazon and Etsy will both like Etsy more so caters to unique shopping experience, so they're more likely to show you the way their algorithm works, what you are looking for based on your location, the time of day, and your past search, your past
Mm,
history of searching, right? So if you and I both typed in right now the same search on Etsy, we'll get different results.
mm-hmm.
Amazon on the end is more like the Google where they'll send you kind of they'll auto populate a lot of the most trending keywords, right, that are currently trending. I think you'd be stupid not to acknowledge that and then
Yeah.
recognize like those are the biggest ones. So, like sometimes they're surprising because I'm typing in cat shirt or whatever, and then once I get the funny cat, it auto populates the rest of the. It could be something totally obscure that I never would have thought of, but it's still in my cat niche, so it's easy for me. And I don't have cats. I'm allergic. I don't really like cats, but I just know how to sell
Mm.
cat stuff. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, in terms of research, get it down to the basics. People feel like they need to spend hundreds or thousands, sometimes even like these subscriptions, and it's like I don't know that that's necessary. I would argue that for me, if I was going to build a team, maybe I could point them in those directions. They don't already know how to do the research, right? It helps them
Mm.
to have kind of some insight. So as a beginner, I think having at your disposal is probably amazing. I didn't have the luxury of having all these tools when I started. It just didn't exist. The industry was kind of
Mm.
new, right, in terms of direct to garment and print on demand. But you've got the tools now. Try them, use them. You won't always love everyone else's tool, just like people won't always love the information from a different YouTuber, right? They might
Yeah,
not
that's
like the
right.
way I look. They might not like the way I sound, my speak, my language, whatever. So like, don't feel like you have to be stuck on any one tool. Use what's best for you. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a great way to kind of get your head around what is selling, what's trending, everything. That abundance of information that I wish I had 10 years ago, to be honest. Now I just happen to know how to do it without the tools, and it's just old habits, right?
Yeah,
Old
I
habits.
think you once you know the basics, once you have a
Yeah,
system, once you have a system that you go by, I would say you don't need a tool. But
right.
the tools, whatever they may be, they could facilitate things for you in terms of saving you time. But if you have a system that finds whatever you want to find quickly without spending time, then you really don't need tools in a way. I would agree with you on that.
Sure. Like I said, I wish I had the opportunity to have these tools and all this abundance of information that matters back in the day when I started, because I think starting out now, there's so much competition. I think, it's much more competitive that having these
Mm.
is only going to give you a leg up. It's only going to help, right?
Yeah, especially if it's when it's time saving, right?
Yeah.
I would, if I was starting out, or even if I'm advanced, I would say to myself, okay, how much time am I spending finding a niche? Or how much time
Mhm.
am I spending doing a particular task? If a tool can cut it in half, I will get a tool because it makes sense, right?
Yes.
How much is that tool
Yeah.
going to cost, right? If it's going
Yeah.
to
It's just
save
how
me
much
time,
money can you make
right? And
if you
how,
just
no, the
focus
opportunity cost.
design?
The
Yeah.
opportunity cost, how much time are you losing by spending more time on that task for the sake of saving, a couple of dollars on a tool? So being completely impartial, whatever tool it is, if it helps you get whatever task you're trying to do, get it down in terms of time, save time, then why not use a tool? If you can do it quicker manually, then do it manually. Whatever saves you time. I think,
Absolutely. I couldn't agree
yeah.
more. There is, there's something to be said too, from, can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, I am very stuck in my ways a lot of the time. And I mean, I think that's a human thing, is to fear change, right? But
Yeah.
you have to also evaluate, and biggest fear comes with the learning curves in most cases, right? So
Yes.
for me to try a new tool is going to take me 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get used to it, blah blah blah. I could just hammer out 10 designs in that time or whatever it is. But if you spend that time and now you can double your productivity moving forward, then there too, right? There's something to be
Yeah.
for being able to maximize your productivity. So short-term pain,
Yeah.
long-term gain, right? You've heard it before, but
Absolutely, mate.
it works, man.
Absolutely. Because we're
So
creatures of
there's something
habit,
there.
you know? We're creatures
Yeah.
of habit. We want to do the same thing over and over again. We don't want to be exposed to other things, new things that will halt that habit for us, that will stop or change that habit for us, you know? Because we like to do the same thing. It's easier, it's quicker. We don't have to engage mentally to try and, figure out something new, because it's long, right? But then
Yeah.
once you figure it out, you, like you said, you put yourself through that pain, then maybe a month later you're reaping the benefits of that pain that you've put yourself through, and then
Yeah.
your whole time that you're spending on doing the original tasks that you were doing, you're saving a lot of time. So yeah, cool. Now, which one do you prefer? Etsy, Merch by Amazon, or is there any other platform that you prefer, that you like? I know you touched on the fact that Merch by Amazon, you don't have to deal with customers, which can be a pain sometimes. The fact that you can automate it, the fact that you literally, all you have to do is find the niche, make a design for it, find the keywords, create your listing, and upload. That's all it takes. Obviously, making sure that your trademark and copyright is on part there. But which one do you prefer? Do you have any favorite
I
platform,
think
and which one is good for beginners?
so. Yeah, people are probably, I've heard people say the exact opposite of what I'm going to say, but I think that as a beginner, Etsy makes the most sense because it allows you to validate your niche with very little uh, experience, or you can be the most inexperienced person, put something on Etsy, and it's like walking into a shopping mall, right? With Etsy, Amazon's similar in that respect, but if you are niched a little bit and offer a unique aesthetic, it's like having a strip of boutiques. People go to you for a specific design, a specific niche, a specific audience, and it's a great way to get your feet wet. I've always considered it like e-commerce with training wheels, right? Compared to, if you were to compare to a Shopify or something like that. So if you're completely green and new and trying to open a Shopify, for example, you don't know anything about e-commerce, it's going to be an uphill battle. You've got your monthly fees you're incurring, and then all the tools, the add-ons to make all this work. Yeah, you can make way more money on Shopify in the long term once you know what you're doing. But in order to do that, you need to have validated a niche. You need to have some kind of metrics that you can evaluate in terms of keyword research, where your SEO, your analytics. On merch, on the other hand, you don't have any access to any of that back-end data until you have Amazon ads. And unfortunately, you don't have to do Amazon ads until you hit one of the higher tiers. So in the beginning, you have zero. You're going in blind, right? So these tools that you get, like that you can use, they don't tell you necessarily if something is going to sell. They what's already working. They tell you this shirt with this design is selling X amount of times. It doesn't tell necessarily how many hits on particular keywords. It tells you a roundabout because they don't give out that information. So it's kind of like consolidates a best guess as to what the keywords are
Yeah,
trending and that sort of thing, right? Where on Etsy, if you are advertising your listings, you can see literally how many, what people's to find your listing, how many times they've clicked on, views, visits, and all that stuff on the inside of Etsy, and it only costs you 20 cents to list something. So where Amazon Merch by Amazon is free to list, obviously anything, you also have a lot less metrics and data to kind of learn, grow from in the early tiers. I don't know if that makes sense, if or you feel the
It
same,
does.
but
It does. It does make sense. I agree with certain things, and I have a different view on other things. For example,
sure.
with the comparison between Etsy and Shopify, I completely agree with you. Shopify is far more advanced because it's an uphill battle to do the ads, right? Like validate the niche, unless you validate it
Mhm.
with Etsy or Merch by Amazon, but still it's completely different validation because now you're choosing your audience, right? If you're doing it with Facebook ads and stuff like that. So you have to validate with Facebook ads. So you don't validate with,
Right.
right? As long as you know that a particular niche is working and a particular design broadly can work, etc., then you still have to validate it with your chosen channel of advertising. You cannot rely on Etsy or Merch by Amazon data with that. And you've got so many aspects that are outside of your control. So many. And equally, so many aspects within your control, which means that you have to do a lot of A/B testing, right? Figuring
Mhm.
out which is the best, pricing page, which is the best, product detail page, which are the best products, which are the best mock-ups, which are the best niches to get into, advertising channels, interests, so many things, right? Upselling, funnels, all of that stuff, right? With Etsy, you've got less of that, right? At least you've got the same storefronts, you've got credibility because it's an Etsy platform, right?
Yeah.
Everyone is selling on Etsy. People go to Etsy to buy, so they trust you already. Whereas, again, that's something that we didn't touch on when we spoke about Shopify. You have to develop credibility, social proof. You need reviews. You need all of that stuff for
Social
people
proof
to
is the
trust you.
yeah,
Yeah, for people to trust you. And still people won't trust you because they know that there's a lot of scams out there, right? So
yeah.
unless you develop a good aesthetic of the store and it looks credible, and that can be subjective. Some people will still probably shy away from buying from somewhere like Shopify. But when it's
Mhm.
Etsy, everyone knows Etsy, so we'll buy. So that challenge is not there. You're not going to face that challenge. Then we have to think about the branding of the store. If your store has good branding, better branding than other stores, then maybe you look better, right? You give yourself a better chance, etc., etc. So less things in within your control that you can change, which is a good thing, right? The less things that you can change, the better, because you don't have to fiddle around with too many variables to try and find the optimal thingy,
Yeah.
right?
And the less things you can do wrong to absolutely decimate your shop, your store,
Yeah,
right? So yeah, I would
absolutely.
agree for sure.
So in that respect, I would say Etsy, yes, it's more geared towards beginners compared to Shopify, right? In
Yeah.
Shopify, it's like the elite level, right? It's
Yeah.
like the top level comparing these two. Now with Merch by Amazon, you even have less variables that can go wrong. So compared to Etsy, if you think about it, here's why. It's all the same branding. You don't need to brand your
Mhm.
pricing page or your landing page or your banner or anything like that, or your storefront or anything like that. So you're like everyone else. You have the same chance at selling as everyone else. All that matters is the design. Is the design good? Is the niche good? Is the price good? Are the keywords that you selected good? And the description. That's it. I don't think of any other variable, really. You have 4 or 5 variables in a
Yeah.
way that can go wrong, that can go in your favor or go wrong compared to Etsy, for example. But there are other issues like you cannot get all the data.
Yeah.
This is where I would agree with you with Etsy, because
Yeah.
Etsy gives you more data. Like, dude, they give you even the email address of the shopper. Man, you can take that email address and and use it for Shopify. But then there's an issue of privacy and all of that. So I'm
Yeah.
saying some people would
Don't
do it. I'm not
So
saying you should do it. I'm
no,
saying
it's
some
against
people would do
Etsy's
it.
terms of
Yeah,
service, but you
yeah,
can also ask them to opt in. If they do opt in, then you're
yeah,
free to use that. Yeah.
yeah. So there's a caveat there. So
Yeah.
obviously, we're just saying, but with Amazon, you cannot get that data.
So
With Amazon,
but here's the this is great because coincidentally I'm speaking at a Printful convention in
mm,
Latvia in a few months, and one of the things we're going to be talking about is I'm speaking with another guy, Joe, who's great. He's kind of the Shopify guy, so we're be going back and forth kind of on which we think is better and why.
mm,
And so with merch is also, it's great in that respect too, because it's like going, like you said, it's potentially even easier than Etsy, which,
potentially, yeah,
yeah, it's like the tricycle before you get to training wheels on
yeah,
Etsy, before you have the boy bike on Shopify. But
on
with
Shopify, yeah,
merch, the things that can go wrong can go very wrong. So like if you have a shirt with a beer on it or alcohol or mature content, and you have the youth child
mm,
selected, which is
yeah,
was by default, you do that twice, you might lose your entire account. You
mm,
know,
yeah.
um, any kind of IP, any questionable, their bots on merch are so overzealous when it
So
comes
strict.
to,
Yeah,
oh yeah, and
I agree.
overzealously strict, like incorrectly strict at times,
Mm,
right? But I mean, they're protecting their own platform, which I'm still proud to be a part of. However, sometimes it's frustrating when now I have to go back and forth for, like, weeks and sometimes months for them to approve my design with my own trademark, right? Like I'm part of
that's
the brand
crazy.
registry, but they still won't let me upload my own stuff. So there is, you know, there's hurdles and caveats there as well. But I think with merch, if things go wrong, like if you infringe or you do too many things that are outside of the terms of service, there's, you're getting shut down. With Etsy, it's a lot more lenient that way. You can learn and grow how to do things properly, I think.
And I
And
think they
that's
give you a
where I think
chance as well. And they communicate with you better on Etsy. Whereas with
they do. And
Amazon, you
that's not to
literally,
say that they communicate well, because they're terrible at that too, but they give you more insight, a
yeah,
lot more insight than, if people
more
can believe that. Yeah.
constructive criticism. Whereas with merch, if you do something wrong, it's literally their way or the highway. That's what a
It
lot
could
of
be
people
cutthroat.
have. Yeah, that's what a lot of people have experienced. So, in a way, there's positives and negatives with each platform. Literally,
Absolutely.
there's no like one perfect platform or one perfect way of doing it. I would say, to people, try different things and see which one works for you, which one you fall in love with, and then go
Yeah.
from there. Yeah.
And I would,
Uh,
even just to add to that, I would do both. Do both. Never have all your
mm,
eggs in one proverbial basket, right?
yes.
If something falls on that basket and all the eggs break, you're done, right? So,
Yeah.
being able to have multiple streams of income, as with whatever we do,
100%.
serial entrepreneurship really truly comes down to not how much money you make, but how many avenues
Yeah.
of income you have. So if one gets burned, you have a there's and you're
Yeah.
never in dire straits, right?
Absolutely. I think that was a great breakdown of the difference between, Shopify, Etsy, and merch. I think that gives a bit of an insight to people who are thinking about, oh, shall I start merch or shall I start Etsy or shall I go all the way to Shopify? If you're a beginner, you're way over your head with Shopify. Like, calm down,
Yeah,
right? Go back, maybe choose one of the two, or do Etsy and merch both and see which one works. But there are
sure. You
also
can
other
use the tools.
platforms. Yeah,
Oh, I was just gonna say you could use the tool to, to figure out what you do with merch, and then you can use the data in the back end of Etsy to validate your
yeah,
SEO, right, while you're starting. So I think both are really good to even do concurrently. But don't get too ahead of yourself or try to take on too much. Just like kind of focus on a niche or something, a subject matter that and start there. Start small, but just start, right?
awesome. And with other POD platforms, are you in any of those other POD platforms? Do you think that in 2023 people can make money with those POD platforms? We're talking about like Redbubble, TeePublic, and all of those, the smaller kind of POD platforms. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
so I do have some on Spreadshirt, TeePublic, Redbubble, and there's another one that I can't even think of right now, but I haven't uploaded uploaded to those platforms in
Years.
well over 6 years, maybe. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, like it's been a long time. So now I know that I think Redbubble public, and then the commission rates went down. They did a whole
Mm.
crazy thing. Like there's tiers now, and I think their hand is deeper and deeper into the artist's pocket. So I don't know if I mean there's you can weigh your time, right? There's always
Yeah.
like you said, there's time is our most valuable asset, and is it worth your time to put all these designs up on Redbubble, the T Publics of the world? If you have the designs, absolutely. If you're only creating designs for these platforms, maybe your time is better spent on Etsy or
Yeah.
merch, right? But if
Yeah.
you have these
Agree.
designs and you can leverage another platform, I think then why not? I'd rather make $1 a pop
Yeah.
residually than zero, right? At the day.
Yeah. And
So
I would say if you're going to upload to those platforms, then you definitely need to use an upload automation tool. That way, you're not spending the time yourself because it's much easier, much faster. So choose
I
one
mean,
that can help you. And
I've never used an uploader tool for any yet. Not to say that I will in the future, but for those platforms now that our commissions have been decreased, that's probably where I would start was with an
mm,
uploader. But back in the day, everything was so manual. You had to
yeah,
have different sized designs, much like merch in the beginring, different sized
yeah,
designs for different sized products.
I
Now
know,
at least
man.
you upload on all these platforms one size and it'll, get kind of
Yeah,
everything. Me was like automated it gets, right? But now you have uploaders that'll just take your stuff and throw it up there. I mean, that's also pretty
exactly.
awesome. I just second me to have the time to do that, right? Or else
Yeah,
that.
totally. Clone yourself or something. So Jay, what would you say people can make from POD starting out in their first month? What would the expectation be? Or let's say in the first 3 months, because first month you're just
And
learning that kind of thing.
yeah, I think it depends. On merch, I feel like you're more handcuffed, right? So
Mm,
merch can be your grind. I think you can either do really well, or you can also do $0. And I guess that would be true on Etsy, but Etsy you're not limited to your 10 designs or however
yeah,
many. So I would say starting out on Etsy, the potential for income is borderline limitless. Like you really, if you wanted to, I've always been of the mind of being the niche store. So I'm more of a slower growth but continuous, and I look long term, right? Where if you really wanted to on Etsy, for example, you could open a general store, upload as many as you can, and you'll inevitably get sales. And if you
yeah,
wanted to upload 5,000 listings in your first 3 months, you can make profits of like 10, 20 if you really wanted to.
yeah,
Is that sustainable over time? No, people will argue that it is, but no, you're going to burn out. You're going to run out of ideas. You're going to, you're doing ultimately you're condensing what you can do over time in such a small period that, or it's just going to, stop showing a lot of your stuff because 80% of it is anyway. So it's
right.
again that time thing, right? But um,
But then you can get a team.
realistically,
You can get a team that can help you to, scale a little bit with Etsy.
sure. But I also think that would be more financially feasible down the line once you've got money, right? If you're starting
Mm,
from zero with nothing, realistic, I think you can make hundreds a week in your first month. If you by the end of the month, if you understand what the customer wants and put your emotions aside and focus on design. So if you're not a designer, stop trying. If
yeah,
the quickest way for me to validate a design is I've said in a few of my own videos is and in my Etsy group is to pull up your design in search results. Ask your mom, dad. So I got to backtrack here, but the biggest mistake we all do as newbies on any platform is we rely on our friends and family. They're going to give you a biased opinion. They'll tell
mm,
you your design looks amazing. Oh, that's so sweet. They're not going to buy it from you.
mm,
They don't. They're lying to you because a biased opinion. They don't want to hurt your feelings. You're too close to them. They don't want you to resent them. Blah blah blah. If you want to ask those people anything that are that close to you because it's a matter of convenience, pull up your designs in results, show them your designs. Don't tell yours. Ask them to pick their top 3 or 4, if your designs are not in their top 3 or 4, they're garbage. They're never going to sell.
Yeah.
So either stop doing it, take a design course, or outsource, right? Like if you can do that and pull your, put your emotions aside and focus on making money, you can get whatever you want out of Etsy, a place like Etsy. You can, if you've got the designs nailed, the niche nailed, then that's all that matters. SEO, anyone can do. It'll, pull you up in search results. But if your thumbnail, if your design doesn't look good, it doesn't matter what letter grades you get or what scores you get on all those SEO tools. None of that matters if the design looks like garbage,
Yeah.
ultimately.
Agreed.
But
Because
yeah, I would argue
ultimately,
that the potential is limitless, really. But realistically, I wouldn't expect to make more than $100 a week for your first month or two.
for the first month, yeah,
Probably.
I agree.
Yeah.
Unless you get you know you get lucky. Unless you get really really lucky,
Sure.
then
Right.
yeah,
Right.
it could be more. But generally speaking, as you said, yeah. But that is a good. It's a good start, isn't it? It's a good start for anyone who's just
Absolutely.
starting out. Exploring things. Um,
Sure, and
I
that's why
think
I want to help people do that too, because like a lot of the people that are doing stuff online, for me, like $100 a week might not be, doesn't have the power that it would if I was living in a different country where that same $100 can buy way more, or in the
exactly.
States where you have to pay, all of your medical needs and things like that,
Mm,
right? Like in different countries. In Canada, I'm fortunate enough that, but in those other countries, like, it can go a lot. So it's not
yeah,
lost on me that someday somebody I've coached was able to buy their husband's insulin for the month, right? Like
amazing.
without having to sacrifice time or pick up extra hours at the job. They just did this on their side hustle, and then they went from being able to pay, from being able to,
Yeah,
pay for the car payment and certain things. So like it's all about the incremental increases, I think. So people have this kind of, romantic idea that they're going to be rich and make $1,000 a week in their first month, or $1,000 at the end of the first month, and then that's going to double and double and double. If that was the case, we'd all be rich, right? We
yeah,
would, there wouldn't be. We'd all be sitting on a beach right now, and we'd all be, having cocktails and whatever, right? Nobody would be
yeah.
even working or talking about it.
And they need to put in the work. So, where could people find you, Jay? I know you've got a YouTube channel and you've got a Facebook group. So, points people to your socials so that they can find you.
Sure. Yeah. My Etsy group is Etsy on Demand. You can't miss it. It's literally Etsy print on demand, and it's got a nice big white, orange and white big X on it. And then my YouTube channel is at Jay's Way Works. That's on YouTube, and it's been predominantly Etsy, but I did just post a new merch video yesterday too. A lot of people have asked
Awesome.
for more merch content, so that's what I'm starting to focus on a little more too. So it's going to be a blend of Etsy, and I think, like we talked about, both can work
Yeah.
concurrently, and there's a lot of parallels. So thank you so much for
Awesome.
even allowing me to have the shout out, man. That's great.
Mate,
So come find me.
anytime, man. Anytime. It's all about why do we do this? Why we do it so that we can help the audience ultimately, right? Because we don't need the money. We've done all right. I've done all right for myself. You've done all right for yourself. But then you think to yourself, what is the best way to repay the
Yeah.
community? It's through providing value, right?
Yeah.
So
So like I've
ultimately,
seen
if we
friends.
point, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I'm good at
I was
cutting
just gonna
everybody
say,
off.
if we point people in the right direction, and if
Mhm.
we, help guide them to, find information. If it's not from us, then it would be from someone like you or the other person or the
Sure.
other person, right? It's not just about me, me, me. No, watch me, because I don't have everything.
No.
Like you said earlier, you might not like the way I speak, you might not like the way I look, you might not click with me, you might not like the way I explain things. Then somebody else might give you what you like, right? So that's why we do
Yeah.
these
You need to.
podcasts. Yeah. You need the variety. So I did a podcast with Chrissy the other day. I did one with Ryan Hogue, another one with, Curtis Blackmore. So my goal is to bring in different people from different backgrounds, with different experiences, and hopefully share the love, and point people in the right direction that way. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that it's the same idea. You gotta ultimately find somebody who you resonate with or who resonates with you, and kind of follow their lead. I think it gets lost on people when they try to follow too many people, because you're inevitably going to have conflicting information because people are speaking from their own experience, right? So, and there's
Mm.
more than one way to win, but you can't do all of the ways all of the time. You just can't. So, don't
Yeah.
don't overthink. Yeah, the more I can help give back in a way that kind of there's no better feeling. People say like you've been so much success. If you're making this kind of money, why why are you? I'm like, well, ultimately because I can give away information. YouTube will hopefully one day pay to do that. I can for help as many people as possible and be able to have a couple of debts paid one day, but also be able to do it from anywhere and show people without any inhibitions. I'm not worried about my paycheck coming in now. I can help people because when you it's a completely different feeling. If you've never helped anyone, I suggest you try it. People
Yeah.
that that say, why are
I,
you doing this?
I
Because
think what you're
it's
trying to
so
say,
fulfilling.
exactly what you're trying to say is that self-fulfillment. So we're doing it for ourselves in a way. It is selfish. You know why? Because you get
Yeah.
something, a good feeling out of it, a kick out of it,
Yes.
right? When you help someone and they turn around and say, "Hey, you know what, Adnan, you've helped me achieve this, or you've helped me achieve that." In your case, you said a wife was able to buy her husband's insulin. I mean,
Yeah.
what kind of satisfaction would you get from that? It's like, wow, I've helped someone. Through my guidance, just a couple of words here and there, have been able
Hmm.
to help someone, right? So you kind of feel like you have a purpose in life other than making money, because there's going to be a point where making money doesn't mean anything. Yeah, you get the money, you buy whatever you want, you drive the car that you want, you live in the house that you want, you go to on holidays wherever you want, you buy anything you want. Then that makes no sense anymore, right? It loses its value. Then you start looking for other means that will provide you with value, that fulfill you, that you like. One of the
Yeah.
things is helping people. So people that have not
Absolutely.
experienced that, they cannot be in touch with that. They can't understand the whole concept of, sitting here for a couple of hours just for the sake of helping people. They can't understand it because they have
Yeah.
not done it themselves, because they haven't
Right.
experienced why you should do that kind of thing, the benefits of doing those things. So, yeah, like you said, try and help people and see what kind of feeling you get, especially
Yeah.
when
It's
your help leads that person
yeah,
to achieving something that they've always wanted to achieve. You kind of feel like
absolutely.
you're
And
with them.
even if if it's getting out of your own head in terms of like getting out of your own way, right? Like a lot of people do hold on to these romantic ideas about the certain artwork and that. Well, if you can put that aside, then you can go a lot further a lot quicker, right? It's the fear of the unknown that holds people back. And I've also seen personal friends struggle through their 9 to 5 same fashion that I have, and like you have to be confined or stuck like that. It's that comfortable when that comfortable groove becomes a comfortable rut, in that it's too easy to roll with the crap and the punches and the tumbling through it than it is to actually buck yourself out of that rut.
Mm,
That's a sad spot to be. I just want people to know that it's worth the effort to get out of those ruts. It's worth the effort to do something for yourself, right?
awesome, man.
Ultimately.
So, we haven't touched on AI. I know that AI is a big thing right now. All these AI designers and Chat GPT, that you give it anything and it'll give you solid answer. Not perfect yet, but something that you can use and tweak. Do you think that one day we will lose our jobs? We will lose our edge, especially in POD.
That's a great kind of, I think, introspective question. Will it replace us? I don't think so, because it needs us currently to supply it with information of what we want. Will there
Mm.
come a time when it knows what we want predictively? I think we're almost already there with retargeting, and the Googles and the Amazons of the world. They know what they're doing, right? Um, we lose our edge. I think that is going to be the biggest struggle. So if you can maintain your edge, and that being trying to stay a step ahead, I think that's going to be the defining line between whether or not you are able to continually be successful, or you'll get kind of surpassed or left in the dust, right? Um, wow, like I started to dabble with it for mock-ups already, with some surprisingly good results. I know there's always issues
Mm.
with teeth and fingers and stuff, but if you can train it to kind of do more of what you want it to do.
Yeah.
And I've got some designs that are partially AI created just to test, and
Yeah.
they're not better than what I do, but it's as good or par. And it was a lot easier than me spending 4 hours on a new design in the cat
Mm.
niche that is selling right now on both platforms, right? So,
Yeah.
again, it's about the time and how you leverage it. I think we're in the age of AI in terms of where we were in like late 90s, early 2000s with the internet. I think if you're not getting on this train
Yeah.
right now,
Yeah.
you're going to get left behind. That's the ultimate. I
I
mean,
agree.
there's software now that you can have customization with Etsy, and it's all automated through Printify. There's a software now that you can, so customers at checkout can leave, can you add this name and this wording? And AI can read and understand that, and they will populate the design. So like that's a whole mind blowing thing that I'm excited to maybe test out one day, right? But yeah,
That's amazing. Yeah.
it's
So I
pretty
agree
crazy.
with you. I second what you just said about, if you can't beat them, join them. I don't think it's a competition between us and AI. It's about working together. So I think we
Correct.
need to use AI to the perfect of our ability, and we really need to understand it and get involved in it as early as possible. People in the 90s when the internet came out and started to, you know, take off, people were like, oh no, this is evil, we shouldn't be doing this, blah, 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 and it's never gonna, be sustainable, whatever, whatever. And look where we are now. And people
Yeah.
that have invested very earlier on are the Amazons and the Apples, that they made so much money throughout, right? And
Hmm.
Amazon used the internet to really take off because
Yeah.
everybody doubted Jeff Bezos. They were like, oh, come on, what do you mean the internet? What do you mean selling books on the internet? That kind of thing. And look where it is now. So I think we should definitely really learn AI and use it to our best ability. And we have to develop our own skills because I think AI will replace mediocre people that have mediocre skills. If
Right.
you're very good at what you're doing and you're always striving to be the best at what you do, I don't think AI can replace you.
I would agree. Especially like if you're starting out, or no matter what you're doing, like if you can niche yourself in some way, I think it's going to set you apart, regardless of whether it's infused with AI or not. I think the key is to find an element, a gap in the marketplace, element of uniqueness, and kind of and work with AI in that respect in some
Yeah.
capacity, if at
And
all possible.
there's going to be people that don't know how to use AI. So we might be the people that are hired to use
Hmm.
AI to provide the
Yeah.
perfect results to people that don't know how to use AI. So it could be like that because not everybody's going to know how to use AI. To this day, I get people saying, but why would someone hire someone on Fiverr to use ChatGPT and give them the work? Well, duh, because those people don't know how to use ChatGPT. Because those people have not got to the level where they know how to give ChatGPT the perfect prompt and stuff like that to get ChatGPT to give them the perfect result.
Yeah.
Right? They
Case
don't
in
even
point.
know about ChatGPT.
Case in point. I'm using YouTube to teach myself how to YouTube. You
Yeah.
understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm using the platform itself to provide answers on how to further and grow my channel. It's a very new
Yeah.
channel. So again, I appreciate the shout out and all the, hopefully you guys come following for the love. But yeah, I'm using the internet to figure out how to use the internet. Like that's how simple it is,
Yeah.
right? So like you
Yeah.
can use AI, you can ask AI how to better leverage itself, and it will tell
Yeah.
you. It's unbiased,
Yeah.
right? Like so yeah,
Totally.
I agree. I totally agree.
Perfect, man. All right. So, any final words? Any final tips? Any final words? Any final guidance? I know we could be chatting for hours and hours, but obviously time is not on our side. So, yeah. Any final words
I don't know,
to
man.
people starting out? People
To people
starting out,
starting out,
beginners wanting to start POD, for example.
stop Starting small is better than not starting at all. You'll never
Hmm.
get it right. Waiting for that perfect store setup before you unlock the door. Don't ever try to do like that. You need to start. It'll never be perfect, and you'll always to adapt and evolve regardless of how perfect it is on day one. So try to get out of that comfort zone. We do our learning when we're uncomfortable, and we do our biggest growth when we kind of accept that we're uncomfortable, and how do we adapt, right? So just start, whether it's merch or Etsy. Sign up, get an account, try to open a store. I've got enough YouTube videos on the very beginnings, from logging in, creating an email address, that whole thing, to some more in-depth stuff, but I can walk you right through it. I think the biggest takeaway is don't listen to all the negative also on all the social media platforms, because people gripe the loudest about the things, the negative experiences, or the negative, or the all the bad, right? Nobody.
Mm.
So that's like 1 in 10,000 is a bad experience. It's just
Mm.
happened the loudest. Nobody goes on about all the good things every day, because nobody, talk stuff sells at the end of the day in
Yeah.
terms of social media, right? So yeah, don't be
Awesome, man.
afraid. Just do it. Just do it.
Do it. They say just do your best and forget the rest. That's it. Just do your best, forget the rest. Starting is better than not starting, because when you start,
Man.
you can evolve and all of that. If you don't start, you're going to stay stagnant, right? You're not going to move.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to keep going on, but I can't help it. It's like people are like, "Well, how do I compete with this? How do I compete with them? They have so many, and they offer at this and this price." You're not competing with them. You're not competing with them.
Mm.
They're already established. Blah blah blah. You know what I mean? You don't have to race to the bottom in terms of pricing or any kind of things like that. You are your own uniqueness. You are
Yeah.
your own being, your own personal kind of entity. Compete with yourself. Do better today than you were yesterday.
Yeah.
Try a little harder, learn something new. Don't compare yourself to everybody else.
And
That
try
would
and
probably be
find the gap in the market and slot in that gap, because there's always going to be gaps in the market.
yes,
Otherwise, there's not going to be brand new Etsy shops that have just come in this year and already have made over 100,000 in sales, right? So
for sure. Yeah,
don't think that the market, don't have that scarcity mindset, right? That people think that, and I know I'm going on and on, but it's really, really
saturated,
important.
saturated,
Yeah,
saturated.
saturated scarcity mindset. Money is limited. There's only a handful amount of money that there is, and we always have to, no, 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 no. There's plenty of money. You need to have abundance in your thinking. There's loads of money floating in the air. You just need to go and get it, right? Find a way,
Yeah,
find the gap, slot in that gap. Maybe you'll find the groovy, kind of elements or concepts first, right? And then you can apply it to a different niche. It might have been applied in the dog's niche, but it's not applied in the cat's niche. Then now you're the first to apply it in the cat's niche. Now people come to your store and buy it from you because you're the only one that has it. Find gaps. Find gaps
that's
and slot into those
absolutely.
gaps. That's it.
This whole thing, like everybody is complaining about, oh, June sales have been terrible, terrible, terrible. Well, I tripled my Etsy sales in 3 weeks on Etsy in June, just because I didn't blame, the government, the politics, the
Mm,
presence, whatever, inflation. I didn't blame any of that. I blame myself for not,
yeah,
being as active as I should have been, and staying on top of, trending gap analysis, right? Like,
yeah.
quite literally. That's kind of, the end of it all. And it's like, you don't need to you
So
don't need
you
to
need to have
overthink any of
self.
it.
You need to have self accountability. Be self accountable. Everything is your fault. Nothing is the market's fault. Nothing is the government's fault. Nothing
Yeah,
is Etsy's fault. It's all you. So learn how to
correct.
be self accountable and analyze what you're doing wrong. Because somewhere along that process, somewhere in your work, somewhere in what you're doing, you're going wrong. You need to identify what that is and learn how to develop yourself. And each and every day, you're getting better and better and better. And before you know it, you'll start making more money than you made yesterday and last week and last month and last year. So forget about blaming other people, blame yourself and strive for the better. Always strive to move forward. And that's all I'm going to
And
say.
like, hey, listen, like, we coming out of the pandemic, we live in a time now that is so beautiful, because it trained an entire generation of would-be brick and mortar shoppers to use the internet and shop online. There's more people shopping online now than ever before in our lifetime. So it's like the money's out there floating. You just got to get it.
Yeah.
Accountable.
Awesome,
Totally.
man. I think we'll end it at there. Thank you so much, Jay. It's been very eye-opening. It's been a very constructive conversation that I think a lot of people are going to benefit from. Thanks for your valuable advice and tips. Guys, go follow Jay at Jay's Way Works on YouTube. There you go. And I love that, palm tree up there, giving holiday vacation vibes. Amazing. And he's got a Facebook group as well. I think it's Etsy Prints on Demand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The palm tree
follow him.
vibe, like it's we didn't even touch on it, but Print on Demand has allowed my wife and I to buy a solo in Belize on an island, and we're moving down there
Beautiful.
in 3 months. Getting out of
Beautiful.
Canada.
Beautiful. There you go, guys. You heard it there. So yeah, thank you so much. Do all of that YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, share, comment, all that kind of thing. And I'll see you in the next one.